The iPad is the most confusing product lineup Apple has, and it's supposed to get even weirder in 2024. What's up guys, welcome back to JPS TV. I'm your host, Javen Smith. Today, we're diving into the history of the iPad and talking about what it means going into Apple's packed release schedule this year. But before we begin, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss out on our tech discussions. Now, without further ado, let's dive in. To understand iPads as they are today, we first have to take a look at what first sparked their creation. So let's go back in time. The year is 2010, and netbooks, yeah, these things, are dominating the PC market in terms of sales. Steve Jobs hates netbooks. In fact, notice what he had to say about them right before he unveiled the iPad.
They're slow, they have low quality displays, and they run clunky old PC software. So they're not better than a laptop at anything, they're just cheaper. They're just cheap laptops.
Steve would also say at this moment that to create a third product category, that being one in between the personal computer and the smartphone, it would have to do certain things better than the smartphone and the PC. Namely, it'd have to be easier to browse the internet, check email, share photos and videos, browse music, game, and read ebooks. Steve had an answer to this dilemma, and this would be the iPad. This is the original version of the iPad, one that is a true hybrid between the personal computer and the smartphone. The iPad, as it was unveiled in 2010, was supposed to be an answer to the netbook, and it's grown to be a healthy chunk of Apple's worth, doing $28.3 billion in sales in 2023. That's like 28 of these things times a billion. That's a lot of money. But here's the real kicker. That number is actually one of the lowest recorded sales figures for the iPad in recent history. So, let's dive a bit deeper and talk about how the iPad has changed over time. Steve was right in saying that netbooks, as they were a dead product category. In the following years, smartphones got more powerful and laptops got more affordable and touchscreen, which left less room for the netbook category altogether. Most competitors dropped their lineups by the mid-2010s. So to recap, here's where we are. It's the 2010s, netbooks are dead, kinda, and Apple has just ushered in a new form of personal computing, the tablet. And competitors would soon catch up to this new touchscreen interface. Just a few months after the iPad was unveiled, Samsung released the first Galaxy tablet, running on Android. Next year, in 2011, Amazon joined the fight with the Kindle Fire. Google and Microsoft joined next, with Google releasing the first Nexus tablet in June of 2012, and Microsoft releasing the first Surface tablet in October of 2012. Similarly to the iPhone, Apple had ushered in a new growing category throughout the tech industry altogether. Other tech companies, and even some non-tech companies, were getting in on this tablet game. We would see these competitor products grow deeper into their niches of that original features list created by Steve Jobs. In the mid-2010s, Microsoft moved from marketing the Surface as a straight-up tablet to more of a touchscreen laptop. At the same time, Samsung's Galaxy Tab became more phone-like, and the Kindle Fire came out with HD versions to become more of an all-encompassing media consumption device. Before long, we'd have a super fragmented new product line of devices that all catered to a specific need. From the Surface Book to the Nook, there was a tablet for everybody. And what did Apple do during this time? Well, it changed the iPad too, but namely by adding a bunch more. In 2012, we saw the first iPad mini. In 2013, we saw the first iPad Air, which was really introduced to break up the iPad lineup with different specs and different features. In late 2015, Apple released the first generation iPad Pro, the 12.9-inch version. This product was aimed at more power users of the tablet. We also got the Apple Pencil that year, the first stylus-like device we'd ever seen from Apple, well, largely because of this.
Oh, a stylus, right? We're going to use a stylus. No. No. Who wants a stylus? You have to get them and put them away and you lose them. Yuck. Nobody wants a stylus.
We'd see the 9.7-inch iPad Pro in March of 2016. And in 2017, we'd see Apple release the iPad 5th generation, the first budget-friendly iPad. Apple didn't just stop at new iPad versions either. Software slowly began to take a completely different form as well. Up to this point, iPads were literally just running a different version of iOS. In 2019, we got the very first version of iPad OS. We'd also see brand new accessories specifically for the iPads. As Apple started ditching Lightning on the iPads in favor of USB-C, we saw Apple create a new version of Apple Pencil. In 2020, they also released a new Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pros that made them more comparable to a MacBook. And that pretty much brings us to today. Every product line I just mentioned is still being sold, maintained, and updated today, but not in the way you'd think. You see, Apple would go on to take breaks in selling specific models of iPads based on internal company priorities. This is where it gets confusing. For example, the iPad Air 2 was released in fall of 2014, and we wouldn't see the Air 3 until fall of 2019. Same with the iPad mini. We would see the iPad mini 4 come out in 2015, but we wouldn't see the iPad mini 5 come out until 2019. That's confusing, right? Well, it gets more confusing. Apple would change the screen sizes on all their iPads too. And for whatever reason, on the iPad Pros, Apple considers the 11-inch iPad Pro to be a completely different product from the 9.7-inch iPad Pro. So, even though there have been 6 total large iPad Pros and 6 total smaller iPad Pros, the latest iPad Pros on the shelf at Apple are the 11-inch iPad Pro 4th generation and the 12.9-inch iPad Pro 6th generation. That's just bonkers. So in summary, this is today's iPad lineup. The iPad 9th generation, the iPad 10th generation, iPad mini 6th generation, the iPad Air 5th generation, the 11-inch iPad Pro 4th generation, and the 12.9-inch iPad Pro 6th generation. So now, after a long, confusing naming journey, Apple can finally compete with every single one of its competitors, right? Well, maybe not. Let's break down this lineup too. From an Apple perspective, 2023 was a significant year for one reason. For the first time since 2010, there was no iPad release that year. Not a single iPad line got an update. Remember that $28.3 billion figure from earlier? The lowest since 2020? Yeah, well, no iPad release contributed to that. Well, that and having the most confusing product lineup in history. A sane person might come to the conclusion that the iPad mini is the cheapest iPad in the lineup because it's the smallest, right? Makes sense to me, but it's not. It's the iPad 9th generation, the iPad model from 2021. Did I mention that that one still has a home button? Well, that one's a bit old. The mini has to be next, right? Actually, no, that's the 10th generation. Again, that one also has a larger screen, but for some reason, we have to use the 1st generation Apple Pencil with it. You know, the one that had a lightning port to charge it? And since the iPad has USB-C, you have to use an adapter to use your lightning Apple Pencil with your shiny new USB-C iPad. And for that luxury, you pay $449 as a starting price. And then we finally get to the iPad mini, the smallest iPad, at a whopping $499 for 64 gigs of storage. Then we slowly get higher up in the lineup with the iPad Air with the M1 chip inside starting at $599, the 11-inch iPad Pro with the M2 chip inside at $799, and then the 12.9-inch iPad Pro M2 starting at $1099. I'll spare everyone the explanation of why the prices are the way that they are. Just know that they have to do with the processing power, display, and other technical details. Okay, so we talked about the past and how it got us to the present. So now let's look into the future. This video is being recorded in February of 2024, just a few weeks before the rumored March event. What's to be featured at this event, you might ask? You guessed it, iPads. The iPad lineup is expected to get even more complex, with the Pro models getting OLED displays and the iPad Air getting split into two. Now, just like the iPad Pros, we'll have a smaller iPad Air and a larger iPad Air. That will bring the total available iPads to 7 if we don't see any other updates or changes. That is a lot of iPads to offer all at once. So what's the point? Why go on this time-traveling goose chase? Well, because it's important to illustrate that Apple has a problem with the iPad, one that's not going to get better in the short term. From the perspective of the average consumer, not nerds like myself, this product is one of Apple's most complicated. It actually requires a lot of research to know which iPad is right for you based on your needs, and it may need even more adjustments if the rumors for the March event come true. Apple has actually done a phenomenal job of creating an iPad for everyone and meeting all of the market's specific use cases. Even in modern day, they stay focused on a common enemy, which for right now seems to be the Chromebook. However, with all of these new developments, Apple has actually gotten further away from the vision that Steve Jobs originally had for the iPad. a singular product that met each and every one of these needs. The iPad lineup needs one thing and one thing only, and that is to simplify. Instead of creating a new iPad with a marginally better display, splitting one iPad into two sizes, or adding the latest chip inside, Apple should actually start combining features into less iPads. For example, it's been rumored for years that Apple is working on a foldable iPad. And while nothing has been confirmed on that front, think about the application here. A folding iPad could potentially wipe out the need for any of the smaller iPad options. Do we need a small iPad Pro if I can fold the big one into a smaller one? Probably not. How about the iPad Air? If I can fold that in half, do I need a mini? Also probably not. If you ask me, that's what real innovation in this area would look like. That was just me spitballing just a second ago. But regardless of if change comes in the form of a foldable or not, Apple does need to simplify its iPad lineup. And the best way to do that is by leaning on the ideas that created this whole category to begin with. Create a product with no more than 4 variants, like on the iPhone, that solves our users' problems. With cohesion and not having products compete with each other for the spotlight, Apple can actually reap the benefits of leaning on what is its most touted features in general: simplicity. Well, that's a wrap on our iPad discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, as that is by far the best way to support me and this channel. If you hate me, at least flame me down in the comments. Be safe, be cool, be fresh, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.